Thank you, Emmanuel. I was invited here to the Church of Gardeners, to the churches, the district of Gardner, Fitchburg, and Leominster, to conduct an evangelistic campaign. And I'm in the midst of that process now, and we have been blessed.
Amen.
And now I was taken by my dear colleague, Eric Almodovar, to Mount Wachusett. He says, it would be a nonsense that we have invited you to this place and you had not visited Mount Wachusett. So we came running from Mount Wachusett all the way here. No, take my car. Well, we just have until about 15 more minutes, right? What can we say about God in 15 minutes? Well, a lot.
Amen.
And not enough. We often find God in unexpected places. Maybe that has been the experience of some of you. At least it has been my experience. And I want to share with you an experience of a man, a very well-known man. The life of this man has been divided in 3 different stages of 40 years each phase. You know whom I'm talking about, right? 40 years in the palace, 40 years in the desert, and 40 years leading the people of Israel to the promised land. This man, by the time we find him here in Exodus chapter 3, was about 80 years old. When you see an 80 years old man, you say, what can we do with that man? He's been for 15 years receiving the Social Security check already. And he's been preparing the tomb where they will place him after he dies not too long afterwards. But you know, God is so particular about things. Because he waited until this man was 80 years old to give him the biggest task that you could give a leader. To lead more than 1 million people who have been in bondage in the midst of idolatry to the promised land. And the point I want to establish this morning, when you leave through that door, the theme of my brief message this morning is that before a man does something revolutionary for God, God has to perform a revolutionary miracle within that man. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And you wonder how come this man who was in the midst of a desert in Midian knew God already. Well, I did my homework and I found out that Jethro was a descendant of Abraham through his second wife. So he had the knowledge of the true God, even though he was living in Midian in the midst of that desert. But let's continue, because I have 12 and a half minutes now. And he came to Horeb, the mountain of God. Now, that particular day was a day like any other day for Moses. And the day where God can change our lives may seem like any other day for you. But that day could be a day of miracles. Now, let's keep on reading, because I have the tendency of keep on talking, and I have 12 minutes now. There, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. And Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. He knew, because of his past experience in Egypt, that a bush did not have the strength enough to resist the fire. And when he saw that, probably what he had in mind was, if that bush is not destroyed by the flames, it means that somehow over there I can discover the secret of preservation. If I can discover the secret of preservation, I would have made the discovery of the century. Because if I can discover what mysterious thing keeps that bush from burning up, I would have discovered the secret of preservation, and I can apply that to my sheep. I can apply that to my life. So what took him to the top of the mountain was not that he knew God was there. What took him to the top of the mountain was a scientific curiosity, we may say. He was curious. So he wanted to discover the secret of preservation of life. And verse 4 is interesting because verse 4 changes in the narrative. The first 3 verses are from Moses' perspective. But verse 4 takes us to the middle of the burning bush. Takes us inside of the mind of God. What God was thinking as Moses was approaching. Notice, when the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, "Moses, Moses." And Moses said, "Here I am." And suddenly, Moses discovered the secret of the preservation of life. Amen. Because the secret of the preservation of life is God within the life of the person. God was the secret of the preservation of life. One of my favorite preachers and writers was Dwight L. Moody. I read many years ago his autobiography. And one of the things that caught my attention was that when he was starting his ministry, somebody invited him during the day. He was walking on the sidewalk and somebody stopped and said, "Brother Moody, my brother died all of a sudden. And I haven't found anybody who can go to the funeral service and preach. Would you preach for us tonight at the funeral service?" And without any hesitation, he said, "Sure, I'm going, I will." But when he got to his house, he started to think it over. He said, "Why did I say yes? What am I going to speak about?" And then he said, "Well, I have this idea. I'm going to look and search in the 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, a place where Jesus may be dismissing a funeral. And the words that I read that Jesus said in dismissing that funeral, those are the words that I'm going to speak tonight." Imagine. And he started searching and looking for a place where Jesus was dismissing a funeral. And in his own words, he said, "I searched and searched in the Gospels for a place where Jesus would be dismissing a funeral, and I couldn't find it. I discovered that Jesus dismissed every funeral that he assisted. I discovered that when the dead heard his voice, they came back to life." And that was the discovery Moses made that day. The preservation of life, the secret of life is God. God is the person, is the being who can preserve our life. And everything was good up to that moment. Up to the moment when God said, "You know, Moses, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I'm concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, and etc. And now the cry of those Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. And you know what? I have chosen you to go there. Everything was pretty good up to that moment. And he said, what? You know, I feel so good with you here on the top of that mountain. You speak to me. I speak to you. Everything is so nice. You know that I'm an old man. Do you know how old I am? I'm 80 years old. I can't even talk good. I have forgotten the Egyptian language. What you need is an Egyptologist. What you need is a doctor who had made thesis after thesis on how to take out people under bondage from Egypt. You don't need me. If I am here with you and I feel so strong, but if I go out of your presence, I will be the weak and old man again. And you know, that's the way most religious people think. They think that when you are in a sanctuary, when you are praying with God, okay, you are all right. But once you come out of that atmosphere, you come back to who you were. I remember when I visited Jerusalem in the year 2000, Israel and Egypt. And I was anxious to go and visit Jerusalem, the old Jerusalem. And we went there, and I was a little bit disappointed because you go through those narrow passages and streets, and there you see all the vendors, you know, trying to sell you and to rob you in a way. But then comes the hour of prayer for most of those people who are Muslims. And that is a very sacred hour for them. They close all their shops and they go there to that place. And they spend like an hour or an hour and a half in that ceremony, which is very, very special for them. But when they come out of there, they open up the shops again and try to steal your coal, you know, when you go there trying to, for you to overpay for the products. And that was the idea that Moses had. I'm okay if I'm here with you in your presence. But if I come out of your presence, I'm going to still be back again the old weak man that I have been with all my fragilities. And God said, okay. Who told you that if you go out of my presence, you're going to be the weak man you were before you came to encounter with me? I have descended from the heaven of heavens, and I have brought my atmosphere with me to the top of this mountain. If you go out of my presence, my atmosphere will be with you. I will put my words in your mouth, and I will be with you. And that is a word that brings consolation to my soul. That wherever I go, I know that I am alone. That Jesus will not send you by yourself when you go to the supermarket. That when you go to the dentist, as I visited 2 weeks ago, I have to take out 5 teeth. And people say, wow, you have courage. And I say, no, I have a good surgeon who did perform that. That's what I have. But you know, when I was there in that waiting room, I said, thank you, God, because you are with me. This probably will be painful, but you are with me. That is an idea that brings consolation. Who told you, Moses, that if you go out of this presence, you will be alone again? You will never be alone. Let me close, because I still have like 10 more minutes, right? Let me close with this. I learned this the hard way in my ministry. When I was a pastor in Puerto Rico, in the East Puerto Rico Conference, I had a friend who's still a minister there in the metropolitan area in San Juan. His name is Carlos Davila. And you know him right now.
We work together.
Yeah. I remember that one evening about 7 o'clock, he called me. It's time to finish, says the music. Let me close with this. Bear with me. Sosa, I have a problem here and I need you. And when you have a colleague in the ministry who doesn't tell you what the nature of the problem is, but tells you there is a problem, there is a problem. So I had my suspicions, and I went into a room in my house, and I surrendered back again to my God, and I asked for forgiveness of all my sins. I don't know, Lord, what expects me there, but I suspect it's nothing good. And I want to be sure that you will be with me, that your holy atmosphere will be with me. So I took my car and drove a few minutes over to the place where he was in a house visiting one of his members. And over there, the nephew of the member of the church, he was in this place where they help people who have suffered from addictions, drug addictions. And he had a break of several hours, and he went to visit his aunt, who was a member of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. This man has robbed a supermarket about a month ago. And he was there, and Pastor Davila happened to be there and started talking to him about God, about the Bible. You know how we pastors are, you know. And the man seemed so interested, and all of a sudden, a bunch of demons possessed him, and he fell down and started crawling like a serpent. But with that agility, a terrible agility, and in a few seconds, he was almost by the door. And there was another man from the one of the neighboring churches who was there also at the house and grabbed him. Pastor Davila grabbed him. And that's where I arrived. And when that demon looked at me, he said, another one. But I won't believe in this man because this man is mine. And I'm going to destroy him tonight. And we are many. So we call Pastor Demetrio Hernandez, who is still working in Florida now as a pastor. He's going to be almost 80 years old, and he's still there right now. I don't know how, but he's there.
I was a kid when he came to work in Puerto Rico.
So, when Pastor Hernandez arrived to the scene, we were holding the man and praying. And all of a sudden, when he got to the door, he asked, why are you holding that man? And Davila and I looked ourselves and said, hello. This man has a lot of faith, or maybe crazy, you know. But we didn't say a word, of course. And he said, don't you believe, you know that the demons are here, but don't you believe that the angels of God are here too with you?
Amen.
And he said, well, that's right. And he said, well, let him go. Why don't you ask those angels to hold him for you? Huh? Now, I'm telling you that we are not alone. But from the word to the act is a distance, isn't it?
Yes.
One thing is to say that, and one thing is to act accordingly. And we let him go. And he spoke to the angels of God then. He said, angels of God, hold that man and don't let him move. And we notice, the atmosphere then was so dense that you can't even cut it with a knife. Very dense. We knew that there was a fight there. And what amazed me was that a man, a drug addict, a robber, whom society wouldn't give a dime for him, our wonderful God was able and willing to send the most precious angels from heaven to defend and contend for that soul. That was amazing. And we asked for the presence of Gabriel there. First time I heard that. Demetria said, we are not going to take you, all of you. And in the process, a lot of demons were going out, and the prince of demons who was there was saying, why are you leaving? Why are you leaving? Don't be cowards. Are you going to leave me alone? He was speaking to the other devils. And Demetrius said, we are not going to take you out, to drive you out. We are going to call somebody who will.
Amen.
And you better go out now.
Yes, sir.
And we asked God to send the presence of Gabriel. And I have been in these situations many times. But this situation has been most precious to me because of the thing that happened afterwards. We asked God to send Gabriel with his sword. And there was about 30 seconds of silence. And all of a sudden, the prince of demons who was there started saying, there he's coming. He's coming, all right. He's coming. And I feel that I would have to leave. I feel I have to go, but I don't want to go. But he's coming. And you could feel some apprehension and fear in the tone of his voice of this demon.
Yes, sir.
And all of a sudden, there was a fight in there. You could not see them, but you could feel it. It's impossible for me to explain what happened there in words. You got to be there and feel it in order to understand me. And all of a sudden, that prince of demons yelled and said, I have to go. But I'll get him when he is alone. And all of a sudden, the guy fell as if he were dead. Demetrio and I sat him down, and he was semi-conscious, He did not gain absolute consciousness, but he was not profoundly asleep either. His eyes were closed, and you notice in the expression of his face that the demon had abandoned him. You notice peace in his expression. His eyes were closed. And I will never forget what happened afterwards. Demetrio took him by his shoulders and asked him, who are you? And the angel who was there identified himself. I am the servant of the Lord. I am the servant of the Lord. He said twice. And the man opened his eyes. What happened to me? We sat him on the sofa and explained to him the wonderful liberation that God had done for him. Who told you, Moses, that if you leave this place with me, you will be by yourself? I have come down from heaven with my atmosphere, and I am going to send you with my atmosphere. Wherever you go, I will be with you. And Jesus told his disciples, hear ye, I am with you all the days till the end of the world. Do you believe it? God bless you.